Hello, my name is Zoe Sherman, and I am a senior English major from Decatur, Texas. My project, tentatively entitled Leaving Wisdom, is a novella set in the year 1984. It will follow 17-year-old Joanna Reese, a runaway, trying to make it on her own in New York City. Joanna's time in the city will force her to challenge what she knows, confront her past, and embrace the possibilities that the future offers. I have drawn inspiration from many works of fiction that capture New York City and its transformational properties on the people who call it home. Most prominently, Truman Capote's Breakfast at Tiffany's, Brooklyn by Colm Tobin, and Stephanie Danler's Sweet Bitter. Research topics that I will focus on for this project are the culture of the 1980s, New York City, and the psychological and environmental factors that affect runaways. I want to explore the anxiety, joy, and confusion of growing up, all heightened by the intensity of New York City in a decade of drastic societal change. The selection I'll be reading today is a little bit of the first part of my first chapter and a little bit of the end. Chapter 1. The Palladium turned into an oven that night. It cooked us all alive despite the October chill on the street outside. Sweat pooled at my hairline and the small of my back. It made my hair and borrowed dress cling to my skin. More and more bodies piled into the building and pushed against one another in an attempt to get closer to the stage, and the temperature rose, along with the electricity in the atmosphere. My friend Frankie got us into the show last minute. Apparently, she knew a guy who was the band's manager, and all she'd had to do was bat her lashes and toss her hair, and the guy had been tripping over himself to get us tickets. It was lucky for me, because there was no way I would have been able to get in on my own. The entire audience pulsed and rocked as one, while a band I had not heard of until that night called Shattered Hearts blared their music. Their music filled the entire venue with so much sound that the walls shook and my heart beat in time to the rhythm they created. Red and blue lights flashed from a complicated arrangement of fixtures rigged around the room, washing the crowd in their colors. Though there were countless faces in the audience, I stood alone. Frankie had disappeared from my side ages ago to find more drinks and hadn't made a reappearance. I didn't mind being alone. The band was playing just for me, and I was the only one who could possibly understand what they were trying to tell me, and only me. The band was so close, not 20 feet away from me, and they were real, flesh and bone, not just bodiless voices floating through the air. If I'd reached out, I could have touched the lead singer with his long blonde hair and tight jeans. When they moved and played their instruments, it was with a stylish aggression and an effortless cool I'd never seen anyone possess before. After a while, the music didn't matter so much. I cared more about the way they played it. This wasn't like listening to an album in the peace of my room. This was living the music. Time stopped. For a moment, I was free of all my worries. Rent didn't matter. Work didn't matter. The fact that I'd left Wisdom, Oklahoma without saying goodbye to my mom didn't matter. I was numbed by the vodka Frankie had given me and the music until I didn't feel my body anymore. Just my soul standing in my shoes. Frankie grabbed my shoulder, pulling me back to earth. Come on, this place is a drag. Let's get out of here. Picking up the chapter, Frankie and Joanna have left the club and parted ways for the night. Joanna has returned to her Brooklyn apartment, quite drunk. There was no elevator in the 6th-story building, only stairs, and my apartment was on the 5th floor. I stared at the twisting staircase that had once charmed me with exasperation before beginning the tiresome climb. When I'd first moved into the building, I'd loved that I could stand at the bottom of the stairs and look up and see all the way to the ceiling 6 floors up. The old staircase was prettier than the square trailer I'd grown up in, a box-like structure in a field off of Freeman Road, but pretty didn't always make for easy going. My feet turned to cinder blocks when I started to climb the first flight. My head was too heavy. It pulled me back down to earth when I was trying to go up. With each heavy footstep, I clung to the railing for dear life, placing hand over hand to pull my body forward. Eventually, I just dropped to my hands and knees and started crawling up the steps. I briefly considered curling up and going to sleep on the stairs right there. I was just so fucking tired. When I finally reached the 5th floor landing, I dragged myself the last few feet to the door with the number 13 hanging loosely by a single nail. 13 was unlucky, but it was mine all the same. My stomach lurched with liquor that was threatening to revisit if I didn't settle into stillness soon. Hurry up before you're mopping puke off the landing, I warned myself. I tried to insert the key into the lock, but the key scraped off the surface of the lock, leaving a scratch on the cheap metal. I tried again and again, each time missing the keyhole entirely. My hands were shaking too much, or my vision was blurry. I didn't know, but it was making it impossible to open my damn door. Fuck! I shouted. I dropped to the floor. My ass hit the ground with a little thud and my head lulled to the side. Sleep. God, I wanted to sleep. And water. All the water in the world to quench my thirst. And to take off my damn shoes. They'd been squeezing my toes for the last hour. You need a hand? I raised my eyes. My neighbor, Max, was watching from the last step of the staircase. A little smile wrinkled the corner of his mouth and his eyebrows were raised up high on his forehead. Max worked at the bar a few blocks away, and he looked like he was just returning from work for the night, judging by the puffiness of his eyes and the wrinkles in his shirt. I wondered if he'd seen my pathetic crawl up the stairs. I'll get it. Eventually, I mumbled. He took the keychain right out of my limp hand and effortlessly inserted my apartment key into the lock. It turned without resistance. I watched him do this, looking at the veins in his hands and the hair on his arms. He had nice hands, nice forearms. You didn't walk home alone this drunk, did you? He asked, handing me back my keys. His voice implied that he thought I wasn't capable of this somehow, and I was immediately irritated by the suggestion. I'm a big girl, I snapped. I think I can manage to walk myself home. Max shook his head but did not say anything else. There was a moment of silence when we just looked at each other, him standing in front of his door with his hands in his pockets, and me, still sitting, trying to keep from throwing up my guts until Max left. It was like the universe was exhaling and we'd been caught in the middle of it. Then Max pulled himself from the daze. Have a good night, Joanna. His door clicked shut behind him, and I stared at it for a minute before I hauled myself up onto wobbly legs and retreated to the safety and solitude of my apartment. Thank you.